it's Brad Laurie, or BlockchainBrad, and today a special interview from the CEO of NGRAVE. His name is Ruben Merre, and he's here to talk about the security importance of blockchain and also fundamentally what it means to have real, proper hardware that's going to serve the needs for all of us who want to make sure that our assets are safe and secure. Ruben, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Brad. Happy to be here.
Likewise, mate. Now, for all of the listeners, it's important that transparency is provided, and this is a sponsored interview. Now, what does that mean? Well, essentially, that is about me trying to isolate important products or services that I feel are important for all of us as users of blockchain. And it's really exciting to be able to say that I have decided to work with Ruben and with the NGRAVE team so that for a long period of time, there's going to be a sponsorship to make sure that they are acknowledged, understood as they build out their technology. So Ruben, thank you once again for that, this privilege to be able to work with you. But let's go into as objective as an interview as I can make, despite the sponsorship. Yep. Let's start with your slogan. Now, you talk about being an unrivaled crypto security in the sense of hardware. Can you just tell us a little bit more about what NGRAVE is and how you can actually prove that that slogan meets what you are?
Yeah, so I would say where we come from, so our CTO, he got hacked multiple times, basically because he was since very early into the crypto space. So let's say Mt. Gox, he lost money there. And obviously we also encountered similar situations, but in his specific story in 2017, his project got hacked during the parity hack, one of the biggest hacks of all time, and they lost 44,000 Ether to hackers. And at that time it was worth $10 million. But together with a white hat hack group that he knew, they basically were able to steal $200 million from 500 other projects, just in the attempt to trying to protect him, so that not the black hatters, but they could actually get the money to give it back at a later period. So let's say his passion for security came forth from that experience. And at some point in time, the three of us met, and we had this same problem, which is basically security of our cryptocurrencies. We couldn't find a solution out there that we would entrust with, let's say, every single last Bitcoin that we would have. So we said, okay, there is only one thing we can do then. We have to build it ourselves. And that meant that we were not allowed to compromise in any way on security. So the first big takeaway that we had was, as long as you have that online connection, a hacker can try to find your private key and they can steal it. If they cannot find your private key, they cannot brute force it. That's the nature of private keys. They're just impossible to brute force with existing computer power. So we built a solution that works completely offline, meaning that we can create your private keys offline, we can sign transactions offline, we can sync your accounts, we can do everything you want in terms of management of your wallet without ever having to expose these private keys. So there is literally an offline wall around your device, and hackers need to have this connection at some point, but there never is any. So basically, hackers can never make a remote attack, and just by that concept by itself, it means that we are impenetrable at that point.
Right. Well, let me just jump in for a second there, and we'll break this all down so that we get these bite-sized chunks from you, because it is a chance to talk directly to the source as you're the CEO. Now, obviously, you mentioned that 100% offline aspect of your hardware is important, meaning that for those who aren't familiar perhaps with the nature of crypto, that we're talking about real valuable assets that are often situated or placed online, whether that be in exchanges or in other situations. You're removing that problem by making sure that it's all offline, making sure your crypto gold, your assets that you want to store are going to be removed from all of the risks there. Now, that's important in terms of making sure that the hardware is of standard as well. So do you want to just touch on that aspect as well, is that why it's so important to have 100% off-chain security, and also what it means to have good quality hardware?
Yeah, so for me, that offline perspective, it really means that nobody can try and let's say attack your solution and basically find that key somewhere on your device. So what we did is we removed the USB feature, we removed Bluetooth, 4G, NFC, Wi-Fi, any kind of network connection you can think of, so that the device basically is a standalone touchscreen device with a simple on and off button. And the only thing you have to do, instead of, let's say, taking out a USB cable, put it in your computer, and even feeling online, with us, it's that single on-off button. Your device turns on, and you know that nobody can actually even try to attack it, because there simply isn't any way to do so.
I see. So it's really, you created an untappable situation where you're not going to have any of those risks, that even though it's sitting there, you think it's safe, you've made sure there's no access points to get the data or get the information, which is the assets themselves. So that's good.
Yep.
Now, what about in terms of just, the technical prowess, the people who've helped build this in the team, have, obviously they're very important to make sure the integrity and standard is extremely high as AAA technology. Do you want to talk on that a bit as well?
Sure. Yeah. So I would say we're one of those few projects that actually got face-to-face and eventually even started to collaborate with some of the world-leading players in their field in the traditional world. And so the first thing we did when we had this idea is, obviously we built sort of a business case around it, but also we made a functional prototype ourselves. We knocked on the door of IMEC, and IMEC is the world-leading research and development hub for nanotechnology, nanoelectronics, chip manufacturing. So really like the level of detail and the level of expertise we needed to build the best solution in the world, because that was what we set out to do from the very beginning. If we built this, we're going to go for the best thing that ever existed. And therefore, we understood that we needed the best people and the best partners around that. So IMEC, in the beginning, they said, okay, we have a tech accelerator, let's go for it. But after a couple of months, they saw that we were really not kidding around. And they actually approached us and said, hey, we want to build this together with you. So at that point, so that's already more than a year ago, they basically partnered up with us to build this solution from scratch. And that's just one of these partners. We have several of those. So just to give you an example, if we talk about cryptography and hardware security, we partnered up with the leading research group for industrial applied cryptography. Mm-hmm. Their name is COSIC, COSIC, and they're actually the team that invented the advanced encryption standard, AES 256, which is still the worldwide used encryption method, for example, in your WhatsApp messages, everywhere you can find. And yeah, so what they also did is several of these cryptographic protocols underlying blockchain, for example, SHA-256, Ketchak, these algorithms, they come from them, or they juried these, or they co-invented them. And they're more popularly known for, let's say, hacking the Tesla cars in 2018. And just a few months ago, they did it again after the patch of Tesla. In a couple of minutes, they hacked them again. So these are the guys that look at our solution from all the nitty-gritty angles, let's say, right, and that tell us, well, there is still a little hole there, or a little possible entry point there for a hacker, and then we take it out.
Right. Well, it's good to hear that you have the world's best when it comes to all the technological development and all of the work that's been put into building the hardware itself. I did check in that, and it was quite amazing actually that you managed to secure some of these big names. So in that respect, do you want to just touch on some of the other key members of your team, or some of the other key connections that you do have in terms of partnerships perhaps, but really just showcase that you aren't just your everyday 100% off-chain secure hardware. You really do have these fundamental business connections as well, and key stakeholders in these industries.
Yep. Yeah. So several things. I would say in this meeting, I'm happy to give you a couple of heads ups, or like unique insights that we will actually be talking about later in the next coming weeks. Okay. But one of the things we're really proud of is the second reference of the Bitcoin paper. So there are 8 references in that paper. The second one is from Jean-Jacques Quisquatre. He's basically a legendary cryptographer who's still around. He's in his late 70s. And so he was there already before the notion of Bob and Alice. Everybody who knows cryptography knows any kind of aspect is always explained by Bob, trying to send a message to Alice, and there is some sort of encryption going on. So he was already doing crypto before that even existed. That was 1978. And at some point we met him, we tried to explain our solution, and he basically told us that this was the way he envisioned himself to also if he would ever build a crypto wallet himself, that would be his dream.
Wow.
And so now we actually have him as an advisor on board. So he's really enthusiastic about the product, and you will also see that he actually endorses us in several visible ways. So, for example, we will have videos with him or like a press release with him, and you will see that he's really now also backing the project with his 50 years of experience of any kind of cryptography protocol that existed. I mean, he was there when the first smart cards were built. So even those are the things that are today in hardware wallets. And he's still there now, looking at multi-party computation, looking at, let's say, the most advanced cryptographic evolutions going on right now. Right. So I think that's one of those things we are very, very proud of.
Absolutely. And what I like is that clearly there was an alignment of interest. You know, he wouldn't have signed up to be an advisor for just any hardware. And I think that's fair to say. It's his reputation on the line. So once again, you know, for me also, you know, it was a big deal for me to start working and doing sponsored content. But this is why, you know, it's because it is about something that is real, has use case, and there is a need for this in the market. Now let's talk a little bit more about essentially the background, you know, of building this out. Now you mentioned important things like heists, or we see hacks as well. We still see this a lot happening today. So it kind of melds well with the real world events we see in the blockchain and crypto industry. What are your thoughts on that? You know, this increasing, especially as DeFi increases as well, we're seeing more fragility, more questions, and greater need for security overall.
Yeah, so there we also think we really have to play a sort of an educational role. So that's also, for example, like yesterday we published an article, and we actually took the time to make a list of, we tried to make it as exhaustive as possible, the list over the last 6 years since 2014 until actually basically today, and to visualize that. So we made like a YouTube video. You can also see it in an article where you can see all these bubbles popping up over time, and you see that towards 2020 it's starting to explode, you know. And it's exactly what you also see in the market. So 2018, it was a record year for crypto hacks. $2.5 billion were stolen, and that's only the reported part. 2019, you would say the technology, it becomes better, hopefully, but the problem actually only gets worse. We already surpassed 4 billion in 2019, and now we're 2020, and we're seeing, especially now in the Corona times, we're seeing that hackers even go out of their way to just put more out there, because there's so many people that are more browsing online that the incentive is even greater. So for us, it will be a story of educating people, also obviously offering them a true solution which they can take secure ownership and control of their own cryptocurrencies or digital assets. And it will be really a mix of all of these things so that we can help people in wrapping their mind around, okay, it's really not safe, and giving them a solution.
Exactly. And, you know, as you mentioned, there is a lot of money, there's a lot of value out in that industry. And perhaps, you know, for the many people who don't engage yet and may be considering it, the amount of money really is quite immense, and often overlooked because it is digital, and it is something that often is considered sort of tangential or on the side to mainstream finance. But it's changing. We're starting to see a lot more serious players enter into the world of cryptocurrency, or the world of crypto assets and digital assets. Now, to cater for that market, you have this product. What I wanted to do was break this down with you, because you have different products in your suite of tools and services. But the primary one, obviously, is the big play, and that's the Zero. Do you want to talk a bit on that one specifically, and how, you know, it is so important to the overall plan you have to market these products out?
Yep. Yeah, so I think so far we have talked a lot about security, but there is, we're really fans of the philosophy of, even though the product might be complex, or the internal workings might be complex, for you as a user, it has to be as intuitive as it gets. So from the very beginning, really from the outset, we started working with users. We actually have a dedicated user pool where we do a lot of experiments with. And for us, it's really important to go out of the building and see that we can include this customer centricity. So our touchscreen device, the touchscreen, it's super intuitive. Everything you want to do in terms of interaction with the device, and all the cryptography, as complex it might be, it's hidden. So it's really like a really light experience, but at the same time we're doing all the heavy lifting in the back, a bit like, let's say, an iPhone, or like the philosophy of what Apple does. So we have this ease of use, we have the offline security, and what we also did then was, because we saw that there were supply chain attacks with existing hardware wallets, so actually attackers trying to break open the solution before it arrives to your doorstep, and just putting their own public keys in there, so you could send money to. Sorry, I think I have to take some water.
That's okay. No, you're doing great. And I was just going to add, while you take some water in, even the design of your the hardware itself is quite ergonomically, more than sound. It's really attractive to the eye. So you've also had good engineers when it comes to the practicality of this as well. And it's great to also hear you're doing those consistent iterations when it comes to a lab and going out into the real world, getting feedback from real users. I think that's going to obviously be important as you go out to market. So you've done a lot when it comes to the Zero. But specific things like, for example, when we're talking about, we mentioned ease of use, we mentioned the ergonomic design, but it's still, when it comes to the functionality, the size, all of that, that's all been considered too. It often reminded me, like you said, a mix between a very lightweight hard drive, almost, and a phone. It had those nuances, but very practically designed for specifics of being able to be used for vast amounts of data when it comes to not just one address. So it really was catering for more than just the small amount of data that some of the competitors have.
Yeah, and also one of the very important things is what happens. I think what's also differentiates us from other solutions is most of these solutions in the market, whether they are a cryptocurrency exchange or a hardware wallet, in our opinion, they're not really looking at it at security, that is from the right angle. And what I mean with that is that a secure cryptocurrency exchange, that is not security. A secure hardware wallet, that is not security. Security is this end-to-end solution where every what if is taken into account. So for example, what if I lose my hardware wallet? Today's solution for that is a antiquated piece of paper, a paper wallet. This is your backup to all your Bitcoin in the case you lose your hardware wallet. So what we said is this is simply not good enough. We built the graphene for that. And the next question, it's all about asking these what ifs. What if I lose my backup? Then again, it's game over. If I lose my piece of paper, it's gone. So we said, if you lose your graphene, that's not the end. If you lose your graphene, we actually introduced the first recoverable backup in the space, where if you lose your graphene, we can actually get it back to you, but in a way that there is never a third-party risk. So NGRAVE or any other party knows what your recovery solution is, or will ever know what your key is. And
let's
we can go. Yeah,
I'm going to jump in for the audience who may not know what graphene is. Can you tell us exactly what it is? Because it's a very unique technology. It's a very unique piece of hardware that you've designed, literally split in two. So why is it important? What is it? And why do we really need to make sure we differentiate this from everything else?
Exactly. So it really stemmed from the problems with the existing solutions. So the first one is paper. It's paper, so it's not a very durable medium. So we said we have to make it something durable, meaning we use stainless steel solution that can withstand house fires, corrosion, shocks, and so on. And so it's a very durable, everlasting solution. And then secondly, because we've already seen in the market that there are metal backups. But the problem with all of these is that if I find it, I know what your key is. I just see it written or engraved or something like that on the plate. So we decided that it had to be encrypted in a way that only you can actually see what the key is. And so that's why we built a dual plate solution, where in the beginning, let's say when you bring over your key from your Zero to the plates, you put them together, you basically emboss your key in a specific way onto the two plates, and then you can actually separate them. And if somebody finds part 1 or part 2, they will have zero information on your key. So not a single bit, they still have to brute force the whole key. And so it's very simple to do. It's very durable, and it's encrypted. And because of this aspect where we can actually split the two parts, we are able to, in a very cunning way, or in a very smart way, to recover part of these solutions if you lose them, without you having the risk that we might know something, because we will never be able to recover the full solution.
I see. Well, what's interesting is that this is a hard copy solution as well. This isn't digital, this aspect. This is tangible, real pieces. Yep. What would you suggest people do? Should they put one piece in a vault? Should they have both parts in their home? Because this is a unique way to make sure that this is your backup data for security. Yep. You know, it's not the paper solution, but how do they make sure that doesn't get stolen?
Yep. So yeah, the important part is obviously if you have these two pieces, don't put them together, because then you defeat the purpose, obviously. So you have to keep them somewhere separate. That's rule number one, I would say. And where you put them, that's obviously up to you. You can be as creative as you want to be. In the future, we'll probably even allow for one of the plates to be completely customized on the back, so you can actually put it on your wall. It can be maybe a picture of you and your wife, but you know that, okay, every time I walk into my kitchen, I see that my Bitcoins are still safe. Knowing as well that if I lose, let's say, the other part, I can just get it back from NGRAVE without NGRAVE knowing what my key is.
I love it. And I love, you know, this is just the beginning, clearly. These two plates are the beginning of what could come and evolve to make sure that you have that, you know, that backup, to make sure that, you know, we move on from what is problematic. And that is, as you've mentioned before in other interviews, is that paper disintegrates. You know, it's not something that's going to be sustainable for a long period. You have durability built into these plates as well. So I think that's important. But if you want to just touch a little bit more on graphene, you know, and relate that to Zero as well, because that's novel and there's nothing out there like it.
Mm-hmm. And what's your question exactly?
So, you know, obviously just having graphene, having that as a product, because when you go onto your suite of products, that's one of them you get information from. But then we talk about Zero in relation to the product itself that people are going to be able to access. So they link together. Do you want to talk a bit more about the link?
Yeah, sure. So what's important is that, like I said before, we have this end-to-end solution that we're trying to build or that we developed. And in the attempt to do so, we really left no stone unturned in every single aspect of working with your cryptocurrencies. And the first thing that comes to mind is obviously I have to create a key. And we noticed there that there were actually a couple of, how do you say that, like pitfalls or still challenges with mnemonic phrases or with the existing ways of making and backing up keys. Mm-hmm. So we actually invented a whole new key. We call it the NGRAVE Perfect Key. It's in short, it's the hexadecimal version of the 256 bits or of the 24 words. And the reason why we use it is because, first of all, as a user, it allows you to interact in the key generation process. So it's not just you get a key from the wallet, it's really you make it with the wallet. Why? Well, so that even NGRAVE doesn't have an idea on what the key can be. Because today, if you get a key, there is a risk that the one who gave you the key knows what the key is, right? So details like that, with us, they have to be out of the solution. And what it also allows us, this key of 64 characters hexadecimal, is that we can actually bring it across or bring it over on these graphene plates in a way that is not possible with the words. So the perfect key basically means that this format, if you apply it well, you get a key that nobody ever will know except you, and it will be unique and unbreakable. You can bring it across to a graphene solution, which is an extra secure encrypted backup, which is also, again, on itself recoverable. So suddenly this key allows the whole end-to-end story to come to fruition and to become a reality.
I see. And some of the things that you built in for features, you have things like large touchscreen, you have multi-currency, you have zero online attack vectors as well. So you address all these issues and full tamper-proof, facilities as well. So you've really thought about a lot that's built into the product itself. And you also have an online product as well, with Liquid. Do you want to touch on that as well and what it means to also cater for the online users?
Sure. So obviously, at some point, you need to be able to make a connection to the blockchain. But it's paramount that the key you make, that one never touches the blockchain. Your private keys, make them offline, never expose them offline. That is the biggest rule in the whole crypto space, which is actually not really implemented at the moment. So that's important. But then, of course, let's say if you have all these accounts on your Zero, how do you get them? Let's say in your app, how do you get them in a real-time version where you can see everything that's happening with them on the spot? And therefore, we use QR codes. So the first time you make your wallet, you just make a QR code of these accounts you made. You take your app, you scan it, you load in all the addresses, not the private keys, only the addresses, and immediately all that data gets fetched from the blockchain. And so for us, your Liquid or your app is basically your real-time access to the blockchain, also the device that initiates a transaction and then gets assigned through the Zero. So that basically you have this real-time management of your cryptocurrencies while having your private keys super secure offline.
I see, and that's one thing you did do differently. With regard to the private key management as well. Some of the things I wrote down, as we talked about with the graphene, that relates specifically to this. So when we just talk about comparisons of security, what do you think really sets you apart, that really stands out as that AAA, as I mentioned before, for a secure online and offline technology, but particularly a connection between Liquid and Zero?
Obviously, the most important one is that we create these keys offline and we go out of our way to make sure that, regardless of the fact that they're made offline, that also us or anybody else will ever know what your keys are. So I would say number one is obviously it's 100% offline. Number two, and that's one we haven't mentioned yet, is we actually put a whole secure firmware overarching part over the whole solution. And this part is EAL7 certified, and this EAL7 thing, so EAL, or common criteria, EAL is a security certification worldwide known, and you have 7 levels. And we are the only player in the whole blockchain space that will claim this level 7. And to put that in contrast to existing solutions, or let's say other industries, in banks and governments, EAL5 is typically their security. Existing hardware wallets have secure elements that are certified up to EAL5. We have EAL7. It basically means it's completely impenetrable. So we have that. That's the second thing. So EAL7 is very important.
And that's where the AAA, likeness comes in. That's why I mentioned it, because that standard of measurement and ticking all those 7 boxes, that really sets you apart, I found when I was researching, because even in the competitors market, many of them haven't achieved that.
No, exactly, and it's just an illustration of how serious we take your security, because we built this really for the user to finally be able to take this secure ownership and control in a seamless way from his perspective. And that's something that's not really possible yet today, only to some extent, but not to the extent you would want it. And the third layer of the security is this anti-tamper framework that we made. So we have physically tamper-proof the device against attacks. And if it notices it's under attack, it will wipe the keys. So an attacker has absolutely no story to let's say, try to physically break open this Zero device, because there's so many different layers he has to go through. It will be economically unsound to do so. Only if, let's say, there are tens of millions of dollars on the device, it might maybe make sense. But for every single device that you find, you will have to do all these steps again. So the business model for a hacker, it's typically online. If I can do it once, I can just automate it and do it 20 times again.
I see.
But with our solution, that's not possible because it's offline. So the only thing you can do as a business model is you can attack a specific hardware wallet, this specific one here, not that one. And then I have to make sure that if there's $10 million on it, that it will not cost me more than $10 million to break it open.
Exactly. And it's interesting too, because when you think about what you're bringing out to market, it's almost like the smart version, literally in the sense when we talk about Apple, for example, it's these smart devices that are coming out. You really are a smart 100% offline secure solution when it comes to crypto markets. So it's really exciting to hear those kinds of facilities that you're built in. Now, one of the things you do talk a lot about is decentralization. We know that word is well overused in crypto, but when it comes to hardware, you can actually develop into a decentralized hardware where you become less focused. But at the moment you're sort of in middle ground. So do you want to just touch on that?
Yeah, for sure. Because that's something I think it's interesting to see in a continuum. So basically you have obviously completely centralized, completely decentralized. And well, banks, they kind of are a little bit, let's say, stuck in that I have to go from centralized and maybe go towards decentralization. And we actually did the entire opposite. So we said we will start from as paranoid as we can get. And that means that even us, we have nothing to say about the keys of the user, or we will not even know what their keys are at any single point in time. And they should be able to do everything decentralized, right? So we actually give them this zero device which empowers them completely to do everything they ever wanted decentralized. They can link up to a DEX, like a decentralized exchange, and do their thing. And what we can do over time is we will probably have to move, or at least offer some solutions that are a bit more centralized. For example, some people don't want to be the guardian of their own backup. And then we could say, we can do it for you. But right now, for us, the important thing is that you can do everything yourself, and then that we move gradually over time towards a modus operandi where you can actually have people ask us, or let's say outsource parts of their security to us. Yeah. But for us today, that's not the core of our
I also like solution. How you separated the tech with application potential or with tooling, because it's the tooling in the future that may be the centralized options for the user, but fundamentally just when it comes to buying the product, they can walk away. And that's empowering in the narrative of crypto. So kudos to you for creating those sorts of situations. Now, what about the roadmap as well, Ruben? What are your plans in terms of concrete time periods where we know things are going to happen or have happened?
Yeah, so we're actually gonna announce our Indiegogo campaign next week on Monday. So this is a sneak peek then for you, let's say.
Oh, well,
and the idea is we will actually so we will announce it then. We will take 4 weeks to basically get a bit of buzz around. So people, if you're interested in us, stay tuned and really look at what we're going to announce in the next few weeks. If there are any doubts you have, this will be the way to relieve them. And the actual campaign will start 26th of May.
So 26th of May, the campaign starts. Yep. And I'll obviously support that as well, through it. And I'm sure others, that are very much proponents of this kind of technology, they'll do the same. But it's just great to see that you're really moving quickly now.
Yeah, exactly. So we really took like crypto winter as it is, as the time to build this thing until, let's say, perfection, or as far as we could get it to perfection. And now it's really the time to get it to the users. So the reason why we do the Indiegogo is we are already in the production phase. So we already have, for example, the first couple of hundreds casings out from the matrices, from the molds. And so the industrialization phase, it's really going on right now. But obviously, we have to pre-finance a whole lot of money if we want to send this to users in a couple of months. So for us, the idea is we sell it to you on the end of May, and you will get it in October. So which is actually pretty small time frame. And the idea of the Indiegogo is that you help us in basically funding the fact that we can make these many devices for you. So we will actually be able to show you a lot of demos and real life versions of the device because it's ready. So it's more about help us, support us in getting this to you, to your doorstep.
So let's get that clear as well. One of the reasons why doing it this way is it allows for more optimal price, probably because you can do bulk as well based on known orders as well when this does happen. But I want to go back and talk a bit more about information about manufacturing, how you secured funding, those aspects, because clearly you had some substantial backers and you've organized all the manufacturing. You are a grassroots project, so you did everything from scratch. So just can you just touch on that? What it was like to build this out, and what are the big partners that you do have, and what are their roles?
And so you're talking from the funding perspective, or?
Yeah, from the funding, and then what followed through with the manufacturing, so that you could get to the point now where you're literally, about to do Indiegogo and allow for that first rollout of the first sort of wave of users, and they can go and, essentially order and receive this technology.
Okay, so you have the aspect of how are we funded, I suppose.
Yeah. Yep.
And the second one, how do we approach this manufacturing process, right? Okay. So the first one, in terms of funding, I think we can be at least a little bit proud about the fact that we are still almost fully owned by the 3 co-founders. So we have still the vast majority of shares are still ours. Nevertheless, we were able to get a couple of backers behind us that have really some caliber. So, for example, the European Commission has backed us, the Flemish government, so basically the government from where we live, the country we live in, has backed us, the Web3 Foundation as well. And then we have a financial institution that backed us. We have IMEC, so our product development partner and world-leading player in nanoelectronics that backed us as well. And we also have a couple of business angels, some convertible notes. And the idea for us is to take the campaign first as a big example, as a big litmus test for, let's say, the fact that people want to buy this. And with that traction, we want to do a real round. So far, we have tried to avoid VC a bit. And with that, I just mean that we have avoided them in the sense of doing a round with them. Yeah. But we have been around the world for the last 2 years, talking to a lot of different funds to get them excited, and to also have them see how we reach our milestones, which is very important. But at this point, we haven't done such a round yet, and the idea is to do that. Well, basically, the idea is generally should be to avoid doing that too early in the process, because you will dilute yourself too much. Yes. So I think we did a good job with that.
Absolutely, and I do want to give you, and recognise the fact that you're trialing the Indiegogo, because that really is a trial to try and perhaps avoid some of the issues that have arisen before with things like ICOs, for example. It's one thing to have crowdfunding, but you may have to give up too much of all of the work and value that you've created with your team. So well done in trying these innovative strategies. I think it's worthwhile recognising. But if we talk now about the industrial aspect, how did you get it from that to the rollout that we now see?
So we had a bit of the question for ourselves, let's say, on where are we going to build all of this? And if you build something like this, which is basically top-notch hardware, but also top-notch in security, and you really cannot let anything go wrong. And so it's a whole kind of a risk management story. What we did is we had look, okay, China, Taiwan, and so on, but also right here, just in Belgium, in our own very own country, because we found so many interesting players here that were world leading in their space that we said maybe we can find it as well on the manufacturing side. And so we went out of our way. We talked to a lot of assembly parties about manufacturers and so on. And through our network of people who are actually really good in are really, let's say, veteran style in manufacturing, we actually came across a couple of really good partners. And so that means that our product is not only designed in Belgium, but it will have this stamp of made in Belgium. So basically, if there is a problem, we can take our car, we drive half an hour, we are in the factory, and we can fix it. And I think that's really, really important, especially in this stage of the company. We rather, it is so important for us that users have something that is secure, that works, and which is why we actually do it right here, because we see that the quality is really, really amazing. And at the same time, we can still play on cost. Not as much maybe as in China, obviously, but if you would have to fly over there every time something goes wrong, that would be completely unsurmountable. We're still 3 co-founders, so we have to manage our time as well.
And what's interesting also is, again, not to kind of sort of create FOMO, but the standard in Belgium, for example, with pretty much every industry, or even if we're going to talk about chocolate, literally everything is taken really seriously. And so when I learned about what you're saying, I was concerned about the cost of employment or the cost of being having those factories or perhaps that manufacturing there. Have you found that difficult at all to make sure that you can work within budgets that are competitive? Because as you know, that many of them move to China and other places to be competitive, but you don't want to forego quality. Again, much respect for that, but has it been difficult to get optimal price or to be able to be in those price bands that are going to make you competitive for the long term?
You mean from a cost perspective for us, or as a price perspective for the customer? For us.
Well, fundamentally, it comes down to the user, I suppose, because you're going to be selling this product. So have you been able to make sure that you can really market this, in a price band that's going to be optimal or at least palatable for the user?
Yeah, so I would say there, one of these things that we're really good at is this data-driven decision-making. So we didn't just pick a price point and say, this is it. We actually know a lot about pricing strategies, and we did this sort of exercise in 6 different countries, including the USA, to see what the actual willingness to pay is of people for this. Because you can say, okay, I'm pricing this at $1,000 or at $500 or at $50, but maybe you're not doing it as optimal as you could. And that's why we went out and about. We asked people what their actual willingness to pay was with special techniques. And we found price points that really worked for us, especially because obviously making something like this is not cheap.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I mean, having had interviews or pre-interviews with you and having seen it when you've shown me, it's clear that this is not cheaply made. Like it's obvious that you spend a lot of money and time with the process. Now, let's go across to some competitors, and I'll name some. Ledger Nano, for example, the Trezor, and even mobile phone sort of linked technology. If we compare those for a moment, we look at the continuum of quality as well, because it differs as you'd expect. How are you going to capture the market, knowing that there are some cheaper options out there that do an okay job? Obviously, my response is, well, you can't really put a price on all your assets. That's literally your investment portfolio. But what do you think? How do you position yourself again as AAA when it comes to price to product sort of equation?
I will base myself on the facts here. So, like I said, we really talk a lot with users, and what we found from their experience, but also our own experience as cryptocurrency investors, is that the existing solutions are very cumbersome to use. And it is so on many different levels. It can go from simple things like the very small barrier of taking a USB cable, put it into your computer, to the aspect where you actually have this online experience with all these existing solutions. And the existing solutions are semi-cold wallets, because the first thing you have to do is you have to plug them into your computer, and the experience is online. And if the experience is online, you probably don't feel as safe as you could, right? So I believe there we make a big difference in, obviously, it's just an on and off button. It's offline, and the first time you turn on that device, you have a feeling that you have never had before, which is the peace of mind of having a solution where you just simply know nobody in the world can now try to attack me. While if you have to put it into your computer, you don't know. It's still an itchy feeling. And especially if you think about, and maybe not everybody knows that, but USBs, for example, the drivers on USBs have been used for the craziest kind of hacks. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Stuxnet virus.
I have,
but they're basically they put a virus into USBs, just in the drivers, and everybody who ever used the USB, uploaded that virus in the next driver, and nothing happened anywhere ever, only when it entered into the full offline air-gapped facilities of the Iranian nuclear power plants, and then the virus started working, and it messed with the actual enrichment process of these nuclear plants. Wow. And that's how far you can go with using USBs to hack something. So yes, you
eliminate that, because we
eliminate that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I like that. I mean, you really thought about a lot of the aspects of security, and that's something.
Sorry to interrupt you, but sorry, Brad. But I think one thing that I also want to mention is there are a couple of solutions that might say, hey, we're also offline and air gapped, But as also, for example, Ledger Dungeon, they did an analysis on one of those wallets. It is simply the fact that you can, these existing stripped mobile phones as they are, you can hack them easily. You can basically turn on the 4G in those devices or the Wi-Fi, and suddenly you're on Wi-Fi with your hardware wallet. So yeah, we believe that also there, if you say it's offline, it has to be offline.
So you're almost the Swiss vault, equivalent when it comes to true security for crypto when it's offline. Making sure that there is no loopholes or nothing's been overlooked. You've thought about everything. Now, one would assume, I think fairly, that the price is going to reflect the quality. So do you make it easy for people to go through and know the price? Is it all transparent, as they go and, start looking at this product, perhaps, engage with Indiegogo? Where can they get in the information of all the different prices and all the facts?
Yep. Yeah, obviously on our website, and we're www.ngrave.io. I almost was saying it in Dutch. And you can subscribe there. And I think that's the best way to become one of these early adopter VIPs right now. And the most important thing for you to know today about price points is that the Indiegogo campaign will be at steep discounts. So the price point, whichever it may be in the future, doesn't matter right now. For you, it is the price point you can get it in less than a month, or in a month from now. And that will be on day one. That will be the steepest discount during the campaign. Then day two will be one of the biggest discounts, and then basically the price will go up again during the campaign. So if you are a price seeker but you're still looking for a good solution, I would really recommend to get on board and buy this thing on day one.
Yeah, I will put my hand up and say I'm going to be looking at buying one myself. And I'm not saying that because I'm sponsored or anything like that. It's just that for me, I already have my Ledger, but I want that AAA standard. I want to make sure I have that in my arsenal of security. So I also don't want to pay, as much as I might have to pay later. So I will be definitely having a look at that. And obviously it's news to me as well about the Indiegogo program. So will that information all be well marketed as well for people throughout crypto? What's the strategy there?
Yes, exactly. So from next week, we will also be a bit more present. So we will announce some press releases. We will also announce, for example, that we're working with Jean-Jacques and so on. And any kind of, let's say, frequently asked question, we already made a huge list of that. So we really want to be ready to answer people's questions. We're also going to bring about much more tangible information in terms of blog posts or any other way. We have our communities that you can join. So yeah, if you have any kind of question, you will find an answer for that in the next few weeks, and especially on the day of the Indiegogo, you will have everything you need to make a decision on whether you want to buy this or not. Well,
it's good to hear that you are taking marketing seriously, because you know how important that is in crypto. Often, even Vitalik recently put a tweet out and he said that you need to have both good marketing and you need to have good technology. Otherwise, you tend to die. And it's really quite true, especially in crypto when you have so many memes, so many narratives, and so much information out there. Now, you are going to be releasing more of that information. Tell us a bit more about the social media channels, though. Where can people go when we're also focused on social media to get information, or even just to communicate and engage with the NGRAVE community?
Sure. So we have a Twitter account. We have a Facebook page. We have a Telegram group. So most of the, let's say, standard social media places we have them. Or do you mean like
you're right, exactly. So Telegram, for example, or Twitter. I'll make sure the links are in the description below, so people who want to go to different areas, they can. But I also, in being objective, I wanted to ask you as well, Ruben, in all of the process from the beginning till now, in building out this end-to-end product, what have been some of the cons or some of the risks and challenges? If we get real about this, we don't just paint the rosy side, but tell us exactly what it's been like, and some of those problems that have come up as well.
Yeah, I'd say doing something like this, it's the best compared to a roller coaster, like really an emotional roller coaster where on the same day you can get really good news, like component XYZ works, and it took us 2 months before it wanted to work, to yeah, I don't know, like you just got an invoice of $100,000 1 hour later.
Okay.
So basically you have this all the time, and I think that might be one of the most difficult things for entrepreneurs, is that they are able to weather all of these ups and downs until the day that they sell the company, and then they probably don't know what to do with their time.
Right.
So,
well, what I like about you guys though is that you've all put your own money in your own time, and you're talking about this roller coaster. But there's a prospect in the future, I would imagine, where you may either be able to sell a company long term, or more importantly, you may be able to attract some serious investments for either equity or whatever. So are you looking at those sort of angles as well, the potential to really build this business model out in the future?
Yeah, for us right now, it's all about getting this to the market and keep doing this as long as we think we can provide value, and we can. I think for us, this is only the beginning, and we want to start with the B2C wallet so that all these users can actually get their hands on security and ease of use. And then we want to penetrate the B2B markets, because we think there as well we have a lot of value to bring. Also, let's say in the back end of banks where they use hardware security modules, we can also play a role. So I think the market is there to therefore the taking is not the right word, but I mean, like it's there, and we want to be, yeah, exactly. I want to be part of it. If we talk about exit strategies, obviously there are many types, like mergers and acquisitions, or basically doing an IPO. It all depends, and that's something that's today too early to say. Obviously, we have a lot of ideas, but for us right now, it's really about the passion for the product, passion for the company, passion for the user, and that's going to be like that for a while.
And, on top of that also, Ruben, it's interesting that we see more credibility in this domain of blockchain. And coupled with that is regulation. In Europe, for example, where you are, there's a lot of regulatory support for blockchain now. And I would argue that because of that, we're going to see more institutional interest. You're going to see more institutional, as you mentioned, with centralized parties like bankers and the likes of many. It's going to go well into other industries and sectors. So there's all these different potential user groups, not just the retail for you. So, it's going to be interesting to see your long roadmap. But for now, the focus is your unveiling, your start, your Indiegogo beginnings, and the discount is going to be there for those users. So once again, to all the listeners, yes, this is sponsored, but it's also something that I plan on getting. It's something that I think is very important when it comes to the reasons we've talked about. There is just nothing else out in the market that's going to have this AAA standard of security, when we know that our digital assets are safe and secure and cannot be accessed by other parties, not even by default or by proxy, because of things we've overlooked, perhaps, like, as you mentioned, leaving it some sort of button on when you didn't realize. You've made sure you've addressed all the risks and eliminated them. So kudos to you, Ruben, for leading this out. Is there anything that I've missed, in this sort of holistic analysis and this introductory sort of moment, for you to just let us know why this matters and why this is so important?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there are still 1,000 things I have to say, and I think it's the same with the innovation we bring to the space. It's actually, there's so many different aspects in terms of innovation that we will have to spoon feed them to the market. If you just talk about the key generation process, we just that part we already completely revamped it to make sure that every risk is out there, and that it's really something that keeps you as a user safe. So I'm not gonna bother you with that anymore. I think
we can catch up and we'll do a special piece on that if you want. There's so much we have to unpack, in the future. But yeah, there's so much you're doing, and I like that you didn't just rush out and do an ICO or something like that. You spent a long time, you mentioned a year, been in this game a while building this out.
Yeah, it's a bit the opposite of an ICO, where you actually have a white paper and a team, and then the day after you get $10 million on your bank account or in your smart contract. And for me, the most important problem with ICOs, or the biggest challenge, is that even if you're a team that is completely super motivated to work 15 hours a day, how can you do that when the pot of money is already sitting there in front of you, and it says, hey, even if you don't build anything, it's still yours. How can you wake up every day, 15 hours a day, Saturdays, Sundays, work? It's just not a feasible model, even if you start with it from the best place you can be.
And it's interesting too, Ruben, because often I imagine the CEOs of those very, very high raises in the ICO, I imagine them in beaches somewhere in the world just laughing at us because there was no guarantee that they were even going to do anything after they raised as well because of the unregulated markets. So, you've literally embedded long-term sort of risk into your model, but also it's important that people know that you've put your money where your mouth is and your time and resources.
Yep. But like the ICO model, I don't think it would ever work for something like what we do, because you would be so incentivized to not continue on this emotional roller coaster. And building hardware is extremely hard. They say it often, and it's true. So yeah, I think if you do an ICO model to build a hardware product, it might work, but it's
well,
it will really depend on the team.
Right, and it works similarly also for the technology. It's almost like your tech, your hardware is likened to the mainnet, in that both are start to prove themselves in many respects. So when I look for a blockchain, I want to make sure that they have that liveness or they have the mainnet already active.
Yep.
Same for you. So that's what I'm getting at is thank you for making sure you took the time before you started to do these Indiegogo releases. That matters. And on that note, perhaps we should finish off on this interview for this first one, because it's really been about trying to introduce essentially what NGRAVE is trying to do. You are the CEO. There is no better source to discuss exactly what you're planning to do as you lead out what is possibly the most secure option when it comes to offline security hardware, and especially for this use case, this unique area of cryptocurrency or cryptography. More importantly, all those layers are built in, properly endorsed and supported by standards that are of the highest, that we see in the industry. So congratulations, everything you've achieved so far. And thank you for the invite to be able to work with you as well. Looking forward to that in the future. And once again, just your final comment, what would you like to say on behalf of all of NGRAVE?
Sure. So I think, for example, for the Indiegogo campaign, what users, and give me a second.
No problem.
What I believe is a big challenge for us is the fact that on Indiegogo there are, for us, at least 3 hurdles. Normally there's one. It's hardware, so I want to see it works. But with us, it's hardware. People want to see it works. It's security. People want to know it's actually secure as we say it is. And it's cryptocurrencies. And cryptocurrencies are often, painfully considered or as scammy projects. So those 3 things, those 3 aspects, we really go out of our way to show you that indeed we are as secure as we are. With this certification with Jean-Jacques and all the others behind the product. Also, obviously, we will have the product already ready, so you can actually see it work. And the cryptocurrency part, where you think it might be a scam because it doesn't exist yet. So all of these fears you might have, or restraints you might have as a reservations, you might have as a user, it's our job to alleviate those. And stay tuned, and you will see that really coming by.
And I'm looking forward to seeing, the developments. And I was wondering, have you ever thought about, the outcome, the longitudinal outcome of having actual stores like Apple, for example, where people can go and interact with all your different products in the future? Because, as you know, there's a lot of buzz when it comes to the Apple stores and the way that people interact. There's lineups often.
That would be really cool.
That would be cool. I mean, I'd love to see that for you, and it would be the world's first if that ever happened. But what about in terms of refunds? I did want to ask you that. If, for example, someone does want to send something back, or if they need to send something back to you for manufacturing reasons, is all of that built in to the purchase?
Yes, so there are whole procedures for that. So definitely we really try to make customer support also a strong pillar of our overall customer-centric model. So yes, you can count on the fact that we will try to be as transparent as possible on those aspects as well. Yep.
Got it. Well, Ruben, as the CEO, mate, thank you sincerely for your time. It's been a long interview.
My pleasure.
We've covered quite a lot. And for those who'd like to know more, make sure you do look at the links below. I'll put as much as I can about the information about what NGRAVE stands for, their website and all their links. And if you'd like to reach out, don't forget they do have their social media communities where they do talk to you, and their communities are growing. And once finally Indiegogo is coming out, the discounts will be there, and there'll be more coming in terms of information and marketing very soon. But thank you again for your time, Ruben.
Yeah, my pleasure. And there will be, I think, a contest probably starting somewhere next week as well. So that might make sense if you want to get a free engrave.
Got it. So competitions, and
yeah.
let's just plug that date again, mate. What's the key date that you really want people to know for the start for NGRAVE when it comes to people being able to access the discount as they try to make purchases?
So you mean the first day they can buy the product? That will be the 26th of May. Yep.
Yep. So
and it will be the steepest discount that day. Yep.
I see. So not far away. So we're talking about the same month as the halving for Bitcoin. What timing?
Yes.
There's going to be a lot of hype in that time, and look into them. If you're interested in hardware and you already have one, most likely many of you do, this is one to perhaps look at simply for security. If you want to make sure that your assets are secure, why not look at some of the world's leading tech that's trying to deliver it? So thanks again, Ruben, and we'll definitely catch up, mate, again soon to learn more about NGRAVE.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Thank you very much.